SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.
Happy to have with me right now Jarod Hamilton. He's been on with us a few times before from PowerMizzou.com. Now a 24/7 site, am I correct?
Correct.
Made the move. They made the move. Congratulations on that. I think, you and I talked about Missouri back during the summer. And, you made it very clear, like, hey, this is a team that expects to be in the college football playoff. They expect to be in that discussion. That is now sort of outside of the realm of possibility after last week's loss at South Carolina. When I think about how does Mississippi State win this game, the first thing I think is Missouri comes in and they're just down and they're out because they've lost the chance of that. Mentally, where is this Missouri team, and do you think that's a real legitimate concern for them?
It's definitely a blow. I mean, to be honest, when they lost against Alabama, that was really when the CFP thing was, for the most part, out of it. But, the internet, and if this team loses and this team loses, there's some type of shot or whatever. But after this last loss post-game, you could tell they kind of actually knew. It was real. It was reality at that point. So how they're feeling, you could tell maybe Drink was not down. I wouldn't call him like sad or nothing. He knows what they've got to do going ahead. But you can tell it's a little different knowing, like, we're talking about from the Cotton Bowl last year where everybody's saying, man, if 12-team playoff was this year, Missouri would be in it. You're talking about all that plus all the hype that builds through. It takes a bit of a second to kind of let that pass through. But I do think based on his comments and a couple other players' comments, they're not overlooking Mississippi State and they're not going to hold on to the South Carolina loss. I think Gabe wrote the other day, if they get to 9 wins, it'll be the 9th time in school history that they've done that. So that's still something they're trying to accomplish, trying to get a pretty decent bowl game. And the last time they faced Mississippi State, they almost lost by 20 because they were looking at the record and stuff like that. So they're not trying. They've seen this movie before, and they're not going to let it happen again.
I think having Brady Cook is a big help in that too, because that guy has become one of my favorite players in the SEC this year. The comments he had after the Auburn game, I mean, maybe I'm just an old person, but that's just the kind of football player I want to rally around. How much of an influence does he have in dragging this team forward through these last 2 games so they can accomplish whatever goals they have left?
I mean, he's probably the most well-respected, captain, leader, whatever on the team. I mean, again, after that Auburn game, literally midway through the game, he's in the hospital and he gets out the hospital and he finds a way to play in the game. He made 35 consecutive starts before missing the Oklahoma game, and then he was back for this game after being doubtful for most of the week. So, yeah. I mean, he's a true warrior in the physical sense. He played a pretty good game last week. He's not 100%. He's admitted, to as much, but the team, it's so much easier to rally around when your quarterback is the toughest guy on the team. Like, it's, how can I complain about whatever's going on if this guy is literally dragging himself out of a hospital, playing with 2 different injuries, 2 very important injuries to his game. He likes to scramble, and they've got design runs for him at times. So he's got a right ankle sprain. He's got a right wrist issue. I mean, they called it upper body, but we've known it's a wrist. And Drink even mentioned it yesterday. He can't even do certain...
Technically upper body. Technically.
Yeah, but we know. And so you can't do can't flick his wrist the way he wants to on certain passes. But he's still out there battling. And so I think he can kind of corral the guys to finish the season strong.
People have, here at Mississippi State, there's been, I wouldn't say positivity, but there's some optimism that Mississippi State, this is a game Mississippi State can win. And I keep asking people the same question. Okay, who's going to cover Luther Burden? Because that is the whole game for me. And that's a guy who's a game changer in every sense of the word. And Mississippi State just doesn't have a guy that can match up with him one-on-one. I don't think anybody in the country really does. So my question would be this. I'll take the word cover out of the equation. How do you limit Luther Burden? That's tough, man.
If you probably got to double, you probably got to do some doubling, got to do some shading. It's going to be hard, I think, in this contest particularly. I think Missouri's going to try to run the ball heavy. I mean, Mississippi State, 126 in run defense. They passed the ball to Luther Burden. And this is something I've been saying all year long. I don't know why it's taking them to the last 2 games to really do this. Establish the run and makes everything in the pass game easier. Because even before Brady got hurt, the passing game, it didn't have a rhythm to it. And that's most of the season. So going into week 8 at Auburn, that's most of the season where it doesn't really have a rhythm. Those deep shots weren't really connecting at all. You saw a couple last game, but like in that, and seeing just a couple last game, Marquise Johnson had one on that pass interference. Obviously, Luther's one-handed catch. Like it was crazy to see 2 in one game, and last year that used to be somewhat of the norm. So I think they're going to try to establish the run, and that is going to open up Luther Burden and all those guys. I don't know who's going to guard Luther because it was funny before he made that catch. It seemed like he's kind of been quiet throughout the day and stuff
That's
like
when
that.
he's most dangerous, man.
Exactly, and then you need a 4th and 5, which again they've ran. Well, I said they seen this movie earlier before. They've played this movie earlier before. 4th and 5 a couple weeks ago, I think it was versus I want to say Auburn. Exact thing where Luther does an out route, gets the first down. This time it's a one-handed catch for a touchdown. So I think run to set up the pass, and then if that happens, Missouri may be able to have their way.
I see what Lenore Sellers was able to do last weekend against, and he has not been the best passing quarterback this year, but 5 touchdowns, 350 yards. Michael Van Buren's been very good for Mississippi State this season as a true freshman. Is that just a one-off? Because when you look at Missouri's defense, it's kind of the story of their season, right? They're really good when Missouri wins. They're not so good when Missouri loses. Is Missouri's defense a question mark, or has it just been the teams they've played in those 3 games?
Question mark it's a different way of saying question mark because most of the year, I mean, they've kept them in all of the games they've been in. Obviously, take out A&M and Alabama blowouts, and this recent loss to South Carolina where the secondary was struggling so bad. But they've kept them in a lot of games this year, and the defense has probably been the better side. If you ask someone, they've been the one who you haven't had to worry about. But the problem is a lot of their stats felt inflated because getting shutout wins versus Murray State, Buffalo, holding UMass to 3 points. I mean, like it's hard to kind of evaluate how good a defense is when that's some of your competition.
Yeah.
Versus Sellers, it was a mix of a lot of things. Scheme issues. Just being undisciplined at certain spots, not tackling well, having your eyes out of place, looking at the wrong things. And Missouri's been susceptible to big plays. I know that's something Mississippi State can do, and they're used to passing the ball. Obviously, I mean they've trailed in a lot of games, but Missouri thinks, and I feel like it's true, Mississippi State's a little bit better than the record. They haven't had the easiest schedule by far. I mean, they can play offense, and so if it gets to that where it's a shootout type of thing, Van Buren, who's had a couple 300-yard games, he can have a day. And Missouri has twice now let 2 different quarterbacks where you're like, I don't know if they're the greatest quarterback or the greatest passer, such as Connor Wigman or Lenore Sellers. You've had those guys looking like Heisman candidates, just going off doing whatever they want to do. So they're definitely susceptible, and they've got some holes there, especially in that secondary.
You kind of hit on something there I wanted to ask you about, and that's, I think for State to have any chance to win, they've got to be in the high 30s, right? Because they're just so poor defensively. They're going to give up points. Missouri, when you look at their schedules, they haven't really been in a shootout. The Vanderbilt game wasn't a super high scoring game. It goes in double overtime. The Auburn game, they've been in close games, but they haven't been in a game where they had to win 38-35 or something like that. Is this Missouri team comfortable and capable in that kind of game?
I think I would still say yes. It's the talent is not the issue. That's not the issue. It's just, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's just been able to, connecting on some of these passes or some of the things, it's just not having a rhythm. I will say, though, the last 2 weeks have proven that if you run the ball like you did last year, you can afford to do a shootout because you're not one-dimensional. And that's what I was saying earlier in the year. I asked Strink about this earlier in the year, when they were having some struggles. Is it like, are you going to establish the run a little bit more? He was just like, well, it's not really about that. It's about getting more of a rhythm on offense, which translating that means is we've got to complete our passes and we've got to connect on some of these deep shots whenever they are available. And now these last couple of weeks, they've been running the ball because they've been able to run the ball really well pretty much the entire year. They've been able to run the ball, and that opens up the pass. And so now I think if they get in the shootout, I think they can be able to handle it a little bit better because they are finally finding that rhythm.
Just a couple of minutes left. Every week here on the podcast, we do an X factor, a player who not necessarily going to be the offensive or defensive player of the game, but man, for one play, they could make a difference for you. Who is that guy from Missouri? Who is one guy who, it's not Luther Burden, it's not Brady Cook. Who is a guy that could be that guy who makes a play that makes a difference in this game?
I'll go. It's still kind of a like committee thing, but I'll still go Nate Noel. He had a 27 for a $150 last week in a touchdown. I mean, when he's been healthy, he's been. If you told me he was the best offensive player, not talent wise, but just consistent and production wise, I wouldn't argue with you. It's 1 and 2 wherever you want to go. He's been really good when he's healthy. He's been battling a foot injury, for this middle stretch of the season. He said last week I asked him, like, how close are you to 100%? He said he was pretty close, and we've seen that. So when he gets going, I mean, they already got a decent running back room. They like their stable of running backs, but no one has the combination of his explosivity and experience. They have, a freshman guy, Kawan Lacey, who's just as, he's pretty explosive, but obviously doesn't have the experience to go with that. They got Jamal Roberts and Marcus Carroll, kind of bruiser backs that they like in certain situations, but they don't have that oomph, that potential to break one for 80 per se. And so if he gets going, I mean, it could be a long day, because if the run game goes well enough, they may not even have to pass, to be honest, if they choose to go that route.
Yeah, picking a running back against this Mississippi State defense is kind of a safe bet, but you're probably correct. He will have. I'll be surprised if he doesn't have a big day. Jarod Hamilton, PowerMizzou.com. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.